if I have a conversation with you, your listeners will hear you and me talk about that. And then that's one community that are maybe having a conversation.
My name is Paul Harvey, and this is Life, Passion and Business. We're about helping you explore, finding your passion for life and the work that you do. But it's so much more than that. It's about finding clues to the big life questions. What does it mean to be successful? What is the meaning of life? If you're looking for more, then join me on this journey where together we will discover through interviews, tools and tips how to live life full of meaning, passion and purpose. So have you ever heard of reverse podcasting? No, it was a new thing for me too until Fiona English approached me. And she's exploring spirituality. And she wanted to use podcasts as a vehicle to get these conversations out into the world. How could I resist the opportunity to have a conversation on this subject? So spirituality and religion and community are all deeply intertwined. And whereas part of my life I had a religious belief, I would say over the last 40 years or so, I have had a spiritual belief, which is not necessarily connected to mainstream religion. And I think this is where Fiona comes in. She is exploring this idea. So I was delighted to have this conversation with her. And if you get to take something away from it, all the better. So Fiona is a coach and a business consultant with experience in the global investment markets. And for many years, she travelled the world delivering presentations, speaking and doing events around this. And at some point, she chose to study or develop her coaching side of her business or coaching side of her life. And that moved into positive psychology, and that became a bit of a calling. So she now researches, speaks and writes about positive psychology and the science behind what makes individuals and communities flourish. And for her, that is very much a journey around spirituality. So this was a great opportunity for her and I to explore this conversation, and you'll hear me speaking quite a lot on this podcast, prompted by her questions, but I'm also reflecting them back at her as well. So I hope you get something out of this show, because it really was an inspiring conversation. I felt very uplifted at the end of it. I really think it ties into my view of where this podcast is going, in terms of this is about us discovering the human essence. This podcast is all about us working out how to do this thing called life. And for me, spirituality is in there somewhere. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did with Fiona English. Welcome to Life, Passion and Business. I am delighted today to be with a lady, Fiona English. Now, she reached out to me and said, I want to interview you on your podcast. Well, actually, I couldn't resist that, could I? Because I can speak the hind leg off a donkey and have to bite my lip most of the time when I'm talking to my guests. So today I have a little bit more freedom to be myself. Well, I'm always myself, but there we go. So Fiona, thank you for being on the program. I understand you are a speaker on positive psychology. That's as much as you would tell me. So I guess I'm going to have to dig to find out what you are and what you do.
So do you want me to give you a little bit more information then?
Look, I mean, my first question for everybody is why you're passionate and why you're here. That's what I always ask people. So.
Sure. So I suppose my passion and why I'm here are basically the same thing. So I have spent the last 2 years of my life researching positive psychology, and particularly within that I research spirituality and meaning in life. So spirituality in particular, which is a big driver of meaning in life, are big passions of mine. And that's kind of fed out of my own search for what spirituality meant in my life. And I did my research on interviewing people to understand what it meant in their life. So I was using my passion and I suppose my own curiosity about people to interview multiple people to ask, what does it mean to you? What does it mean to you? And so forth. So when I finished and I produced a research paper.
And I can hear a touch of the good country in there. So I guess you come from quite a religious place, don't you?
Well, Well, yeah. So I'm Irish,
Yeah, that's why I had to put a touch of the good country in there.
So I suppose that has informed this in some way. So traditionally, Ireland would have been very religious, much less so now. I mean, the population attending church is very low, and my own search has formed out of the idea that I left my own religion. Like as a teenager, I didn't connect with Catholicism, and I felt as a woman that there wasn't a place for me there. And I probably threw the baby out with the bathwater, where I said, as a teenager don't want anything to do with that. That doesn't feel right for me, and I'm not going to do anything. And then through my 20s and 30s, I started kind of trying to understand what it meant to me. I was reading books on Buddhism and Hinduism. I've walked the Camino de Santiago. I've been to Nepal to see temples. So I was a bit of a spiritual seeker. And that culminated in me basically wanting to go the full distance and do some research around it in terms of what it means in my life and what it meant in other people's lives as well. And that led me here. So my plan around what I'm terming reverse podcasting is that I think we need to start a conversation about spirituality. So what does it mean in people's lives? And I think when we do that in a very open way, so I'm interested to hear your story, not to tell you what I think you should think. If we do that on multiple podcasts with different listenerships, what we're doing is saying, let's talk about this. And you have one view and I have another. And that's great. And that's really interesting for us to talk about that. And I think by doing that, we give people permission to explore spirituality in their life, because what's clear from the research is that it really benefits well-being. It benefits how we create meaning in life. But often if we don't go for the more traditional religion, which is a guideline for how you should do it, we can get a bit lost, and we can lack kind of meaning and purpose and connection in our lives. So I suppose my passion is this subject because I've invested so much in trying to define what it means for myself, and also that I really want to live in a world where people can define it for themselves and can get the well-being benefits, both individually and as a community, that I believe can come out of it as well.
That sounds nice. Like it. So ask away. If you want to reverse pod me, go ahead.
Reverse podcasting. So what I tend to do is so when I was interviewing people, I put together what we call a semi-structured interview. So the idea is that I would interview you. I'd have a loose idea of what I wanted to know, but I'd let you guide me. So what I've been doing on the reverse podcast is using these semi-structured interviews to get a view of what spirituality means in your life. So I always start with a very broad question, which you can go any way with, which is, what is your experience of spirituality in your life?
Well, it's interesting. My mum was quite religious in a way. She certainly attended church on a Sunday, and my father was ambivalent about it. He never attended church. Well, he did because she said so, but that's kind of how it worked. And obviously went with the occasions, and I got involved in the community as a child in that respect. So I got involved with the church, and I was always a good singer. So I ended up in the choir. Purely because I could sing, and that's why I'm in the choir. So that was more about singing than being there. But I kind of rolled with it, and I ended up going through confirmation and all that. And then there was something, and I can not tell you what it was. There was a sudden no, and I have no idea what caused that. And I was about
what age you were?
14, 15. I mean, obviously puberty, but there was a sudden. This is what this is just. It's just rubbish, but at the time, and that's where I was, I just kind of walked away from it. But it's interesting because I came back to spirituality in a wider context when I was 29. So when I was 27, I discovered acting, and I was in a play, and I was awful. But I got the bug. And I looked for courses and things that I could do around acting. So I found this summer course for 2 weeks and that I could do. And I joined the summer course, and I arrived on the Monday. I started crying by the Tuesday, and I don't think I stopped crying for 2 weeks.
Wow. I
really touched into parts of my feelings that I had not touched as an adult. I just had boxed my feelings somewhere, and they all came out. And as a result of doing that training, I then did more training, and I met various people. And the acting profession is certainly a lot more open to spiritual kind of things, because because they're so in touch with themselves, weird shit starts to happen. Weird things happen. So it's like, there's an amazing acting exercise you can do. And I've done this several times in things, and I've even led it a couple of times now, where you stand with, you know, and they pair people up. So you pair up tiny women with huge guys, and they stand like with their hands together, leaning on each other, pushing, and the guy mustn't push her over. That's the rule, but because obviously he's going to be much stronger. But they stand pushing, and that's it. And then he's told to start repeating, "I am really weak. I am really weak. I am really weak. I am so weak." And she just pushes him over. And it's this mental thing, it's this psychic thing, it's this thing. Now there are so many things like that can happen, and it's something, you're in touch with something. But I've even seen that exercise done in silence, where other people have influenced other people and pushed them over.
Yeah.
So there is what it opened the door for me at those times is that there is unseen something. There is a world beyond where we can see and feel and are conscious with. And I think that's the place where that spiritual connection or spirituality exists. And it's around the kind of affirmations. It's all that kind of stuff that people do and use. So I'm a big user of affirmations and positivity. I think they are incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
And how we think and what we think about invariably leads us in that direction. Now, is that spirituality? I think it is to a point.
Well, I would say one thing. I'm a big advocate that spirituality is whatever you want it to be. So one thing I'm not a big fan of the definitions, because that just puts it in a box again. But I think something you touched on there is really important as well. So creativity and spirituality and emotions are often linked because they're all right brain phenomena, that kind of way. So, and one of the problems we can struggle with it is because our left brain rationality kind of can't see it and touch it, if you like. So it's not unusual for creativity and spirituality to coexist.
But once you start being open and aware to these things, the kind of miracles that start happening in life, you kind of think, well, how the hell did that happen? It's like, I have gone places and, been thinking about someone prior to going there who either lives on the other side of the bloody world or something ridiculous. And I turn up somewhere and they're there and I go, hello, didn't expect to see you here. And it's like, yeah, and I know they are, it's a coincidence, but how many of these coincidences do we need to experience in life to recognize there's something bigger at play here?
And by extension, then, would you go as far as saying that you believe in something as a being, or is it more that?
No, it's a collective consciousness. I think.
Collective consciousness, yeah.
I don't believe in an old man with a beard holding everything together. Besides, it's probably a woman. It's probably a woman anyway.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. So you believe that there is something which is connecting us, if you want for a better word.
Well, I'm quite interested in physics, and I love the description. There's a description of, and I've actually said this a couple of times on the podcast anyway, but there's a description of subatomic particles. Now, we're all made up of atoms, and subatomic particles exist inside us. They are part of our makeup. And there's this lovely experiment where you can do quarks come in pairs, and the pair one is going up and one is going down. They spin in one direction or the other, and you can detect the spin. You can notice the spin of the quark, but you can separate them. You can take them apart. You can move them away from each other. You can also change the spin, and if you change the spin of the one on the left, the one on the right will instantly change simultaneously because somehow they're connected. It's called quantum pairing.
Okay.
Now, the kind of thought is that quantum pairing, they're not actually paired at all. Well, they are paired, but they're actually the same thing. What you're looking at is 2 points on a ring, on a stretchy ring. So if I've got a ring and I can only see 2 points in this reality, but because the other parts of the ring go into other realities, other dimensions that we physically can't see. So it's like, if you turn a wheel in one direction and I'm looking at 2 points on it, 1 point's going up, 1 point's going down. So to me, this idea of a collectiveness, I think we're all connected. I think if I've got quarks inside me, and quarks have this capacity to be taken apart and do different things in different locations. It must mean that I'm connected with everybody in some way.
And do you feel connected with other people?
I think it's a state of mind. I don't always feel connected with other people. I think it depends on, I mean, we always have that moment where we are connected with someone.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly passion and the idea of, of a sexual partner. Yes, there's a connection. There is a connection there at the beginning of a relationship and into a relationship, but more so at the beginning. But there are people that you just click with on some level. There are some people you don't. Some people, the vibration is so different. You just, or I can take them, but not for long.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. My question was more, do you feel that there's a connection within humanity, if you like, or is it the
I don't know. I don't know whether it's in humanity or not.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
I mean, the quark experiment, though, would say that everything's connected, and would almost say that everything is all the same stuff. So I'm alive, and this pen isn't alive, but we're made of the same material.
Same material. Matter is ultimately similar for everybody. And you mentioned how that event, I suppose, starting acting when you were 29, reintroduced spirituality into your life. So does it play the same role now, or has it changed in that period from when that happened for you?
Well, I met my wife on a creativity exercise, on a creativity course. So I met my wife on that event, and she's quite spiritually minded in the same thing. So together we do have a similar path on this. I mean, she's got more stories than I've got. Some of the things that have happened to her are even more strange. So we both experience different things. I can't think of any stories. I can think of hers because hers are more impressive than mine, but I don't know why that is.
I don't think you should share hers, maybe. No, it's more, what does spirituality look like in your day-to-day life? So on a random Tuesday rather than events, if you like.
Well, I guess there's always, I have a meditation in my life. So I will do some meditation in the mornings, 10 minutes or so, not a huge amount. I run, as I said to you, and running to me is a state of mind and a state of grace as well. So when I'm running, there's always that sense of being in connection with the world. I don't know, it depends. I've got to be in the right frame for it, in the right frame of mind for it. And I guess if we go to the church example, that's what churches were good for. That they had this way of bringing people to the point where they were responsive to it. They were open to it.
Yeah, I think that, and also we set the time aside for it as well. I think one of the big killers of our spiritual life is time and scarcity of time. I saw your Facebook Live that you did on Sunday about ceremony and ritual. I think that as organized participation falls, we forget that we need to mark ceremony and ritual to remember how sacred our life is. Like, it doesn't have to be in any particular way. It could be your morning meditation or whatever. But there was a role there, definitely, that churches played, and that we are losing somewhat.
Well, I think we've lost so much by losing the church. And I think the church partially was, I think it's partially its own fault because it hasn't modernized in any way. But I think what we've lost is community, and I think that is. I mean, we talk about spirituality, but I think it's very linked to community.
Yeah,
because it's about the human condition, about being together in groups. That I think is important, and I think the world is screaming out for community.
I completely agree. So on the basis of that, like you talk about how you practice with your wife, or at least you're able to converse with her about your own beliefs. Are there other people in your life that you would share spirituality?
Yes, quite a few. Well, I live in a place called Forres, and I am 4 miles away from the Findhorn Foundation.
Okay.
So the Findhorn Foundation is an international spiritual community.
Yeah, I know where it is. Yeah.
Okay, so I live near there, and I'm not an active member so much anymore, but I used to be a very active member within the community.
Okay, yeah. So you actively seek community.
We came here because of the foundation.
Oh wow, okay, yeah. So that, as a result, then spirituality is very important to you as well.
It was at the time, and we came here. Well, we came here for a variety of reasons. We left London because we wanted something different for my son. We wanted a more community upbringing.
Sure.
I mean, he went to the community school here, so there was all sorts of reasons why it was good for him to be here and good for us to be here.
Okay.
Hmm.
And how do you think that community shaped your spirituality?
Oh, I don't know. I guess it because it comes and goes, and I don't know why. For the last few years, I haven't been as active in my in this place as I was, and I don't know what shifted, why it shifted. I can't really answer that question because I don't actually know.
That's
I mean, there are
okay.
times when I'm very connected with it, and times when I'm not. I guess. Oh, hang on a minute. No, I guess when my son was very much involved in the school, we were very much involved with the school with him, and there was a lot of spirituality around that school. It's a Steiner school, so there's lots of involvement in terms of festivals and rituals around that. And I mentioned, I'm not sure what I mentioned on Sunday on that podcast on that live on Sunday, but there's a lot of rituals around the Advent time, so that's
Absolutely.
why I'm using it. I'm using my Advent tea calendar because it's like someone gave it to me. It's like, well, Christmas is a bit more than just presents and Santa. It used to be it was never a Christian festival in the beginning. It was always Yule. It was always part of this transition between the winter and moving back into the sunlight. So, but as for your question about does that community work with it, I can't really get my brain around the question, to be honest. I'm rambling. This is terrible.
It's all right.
Terrible quality. What a terrible guest I am. I'm bloody useless, aren't I? Horrible guest.
No, rambling's good. But I always say it's when we talk like that quite openly without having structured answers, sometimes we show ourselves something that we weren't aware of before. I see it in coaching a lot, that people say, oh, I didn't actually understand that, I thought that, or whatever. So I always encourage people to play a little bit in terms of what it looks like. I suppose what I'm curious about is that there was an event and spirituality came back into your life. You moved to be close to a spiritual community as one of the reasons. Okay, so you spend less time there now. I'm curious about how spirituality has evolved and why it's playing less of a role in your life today.
I guess busyness of life, busyness of work, busyness of the situation you find yourself in. And what I do realize is when you actually have the capacity to trust and just allow things to open as they should, it all works.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to forget that. And so what happens is you put your shoulder back to the wheel again, and you forget all the things that make you feel good about life and everything else, and you just do what you do. And then suddenly you think, oh God, I feel crap. Why do I feel so crap? And because you've actually let go of stuff which actually makes you feel good.
Yeah.
So I mean, one thing I do is I use positive appreciation in things, and gratitude. So at the moment, I'm exploring the idea of doing thinking about 3 things that have been good every day before I go to sleep. Writing them down would be good, but thinking about them as a start. I mean, I might start writing them down, but just writing down 3 things, just to recognize that today was a day, and these were things that were worth having. But there's also this other idea which came out last week on some coaching I was involved in, this idea of gratitude. So gratitude is being thankful for the shit bits.
Yeah. Yeah, because of what it can build within you as well.
Because this is what helps you grow.
Yeah. And like resilience and grit are, as you know, are areas that we look at in positive psychology, along with gratitude. Gratitude is one of the most researched areas in terms of interventions within positive psychology. And life is tough sometimes, like look away. So it can be, how do we reframe that for ourselves in a positive way?
Yeah.
So if you could do something differently tomorrow in relation to your spirituality, what would that be?
That's a tough question to just answer in my head. I suppose I guess okay. I guess it depends, right? So and it will depend on income, wouldn't it? Really. I mean, if I wasn't required to be sitting here doing stuff for clients or what have you in the daytime, and my day was more my own, I probably would do more walking in nature. I probably would be doing more connection with the outside world, I think. That's why I love living up here running. I mean, I live, as you said, I live in Forest, which is in the Highlands of Scotland practically.
Mm.
So when I run, I'm running in streets, but a lot of the time I can run in woodland if I want to.
Yeah. And that seems quite important to you, nature.
Yeah, it has become so.
Okay. And do you think that that's linked to your spirituality then as well?
Well, that's a direct connection with it to me.
Mm.
Well, I know this is all stuff. This stuff around me is all man-made, whereas I guess the rest of it is God-made, for the want of a better word.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Whether you believe in God in inverted commas.
Yeah, the big white beard. Well, I've got the beard, so I'm close enough. But we're all God, aren't we?
Nature is something that came up a lot in my interviews, that people felt connected to. Actually, connection was a thing that came out, in whatever way you feel connection to be in your life. And nature was something that people said, I went for a walk on my own, or I spent time on my own, or I spent time in nature. And again, it was getting away from the man-made and getting back to what was real.
I mean, there's times when you can feel really connected. I mean, it was snowing the other week, and I ran up into the woods, and I literally stood in the middle of nowhere in the woods, and there was snow around me, and I was just standing there, just listening to the snow through the wind for the trees. There was a time in the summer when my wife went up to the Findhorn Bay, and we sat on the mouth of the bay. Just watching as it was the time the tide had shifted, so the tide was changing, and so as the tide changes, the fish either run in or out, and all the seals and the birds were going frantic because it was supper was ready, and the seals were feeding and everything else. It was just amazing just to watch this feeding frenzy going on. And what was interesting about that is the nature responded to us. The seals came and had a look at us because we were sitting there watching them. They came up and they were about 20 feet of us. They popped up and watched, and then went away fishing again. It was fascinating.
It's gorgeous as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's totally gorgeous. Totally gorgeous.
Yeah. And do you think that spirituality, in whatever form that may take, informs your professional life?
Yes, it does. I think it does, because if I met someone that jarred with my spirituality, I wouldn't work with them.
Okay, wow, yeah, okay, that's strong. Yeah.
Well, there's no point, is there? I mean, if I'm going to work with someone, I want to like them at least.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and
it's a strong decision to make, because sometimes that person is paying you as well. That there is a financial element to it that others could struggle with. So.
Well, there is, but that's equivalent to that's going against your values, isn't it?
Selling your soul.
Yeah. It's going against your values. If someone's doing something you don't agree with, why help them?
It's true. It's just not everybody's strong enough to make that stand.
It's like, I'm just going to trash the planet. Why not? It's like, not on my watch.
You've mentioned being in nature a few times. So you mentioned your wife was there with you one time, and then obviously you run alone, from what I understand, quite regularly as well. I've asked you about community within spirituality, but in terms of spiritual practice, do you practice alone, or do you prefer to practice with people? And spiritual practice, again, can be anything that you want it to be.
I meditate on my own most of the time, because it's easy to do that. Saying that, I was involved with an organisation that did practice Qigong a couple of years ago, and there was quite a lot of group meditation in that, and it was a very different feeling.
Okay.
And talking to the organizer of that, it's incredible what she was actually doing. So I would say to her, how comes everyone seems to sleep? And she said, because I put them to sleep. How do you do that? She said, hard to explain. Takes years of practice. But you knew it was an amazing lady. She was an amazing lady. Yeah, her name is Bizong Gu, and you knew when she walked in the room.
Yeah.
She didn't say anything. She just walked in the room, and it's like the room, the air in the room changed.
Wow. Very good. And that could be the example that I asked for. But can you tell me about a time when you practiced or experienced spirituality which is very memorable for you?
I guess we have some New Year rituals that we do. They're not so good so much. I don't know why it doesn't seem to have so much relevance now, but there's a New Year. There's a spiral walk that happens at the Findhorn Foundation every year on the 21st of December. First, it's basically the winter solstice. It happens on that day. And so the idea is you walk into the spiral and then you walk back out of the spiral. So you walk in from one year, and as you come out, you're out into the new year. And so you take your intentions out, you release your intentions for this year as you walk in, and then you gain your new intentions when you walk out. And that in previous years has had real relevance and meaning for me. I have to say last year, and I don't know why, it didn't feel so good. And I have no idea what the difference is. No idea what the difference is. So yes, that's what I can think of at the moment.
Okay. And that's special to you because...
Well, what was special about it is it kind of, I guess, it kind of sets an intention for the year. You kind of, if it's been a tough year, you can release it. Okay, well, it's a new year. I'm shedding it. I walk through the labyrinth here, and I come out the other side, and it's a new slate.
Sure.
I'm reborn again.
That's what going back to rituals. That's what an awful lot of rituals are about setting intentions and releasing as well. So.
It is.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What should I ask you that I haven't asked?
Oh, dear, you're chucking the question back at me. I haven't a chance to chuck the question at you yet. That's unfair. Around connection, spirituality, I don't know. I think you've asked me most of the things about it, really. I mean, it certainly is important in my life. And I think I need to learn to trust more in terms of just trust the outcome more and not let my head get in the way. And I think that's to me what spirituality is about, is that ability to just trust, have faith.
Yeah. No, for sure. And
have faith in my ability, who I am and what I do and what I bring to the world.
Yeah, and that totally resonates with me, because it goes back to, you said something earlier on which really resonated with me. Sometimes the connection is stronger than others, and I really understand that sometimes I'm in a very trusting place and everything seems to flow, and then other times it's like my mind wants to control the outcome, as you said. So if you could wake up tomorrow morning and you could have faith and trust, would you do something differently?
No, I actually quite enjoy what I do. I love what I do.
Yeah.
I mean, financially, it could be better. That would be nice. I mean, it's not a problem, but it would be nice if it were better. It would be nice if there were less challenges in that area. But that's down to me again, and that's down to faith.
Yeah.
And trust again.
Yeah. My question wasn't actually, would you change your job? Because you've selected that rather than you're just doing it, if you like. More, what are the day-to-day activities that suggest that you're not fully trusting? Is it working too much? Is it...
Yeah, probably working too much.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah. So.
But the point, I guess what I need to do is I need to do more new stuff. I don't do enough. I don't do enough fresh things. I do too many things that I've already done. I guess I'm 56 and I'm in a bit of a rut in that respect. I don't do enough new things. I think discover more. Yeah.
And by new things, you don't mean just about spirituality, just in relation to life in general, or?
Life in general. I think I need to take a few more risks.
Yeah. Okay. There's an intention for 2020 now.
There is, isn't there? Jumping out of an airplane, probably, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. It was good to set. I think that we're programmed to be risk averse, so we have to push ourselves all the time to do different things. I see that in my own life. I've changed career in the last few years, and that's been a very uncertain period as well. And you have to lean into it again and again, because we're naturally programmed to run away from it, if you like, So.
Well, the rewards are on the other side of fear, aren't they?
Absolutely, 100%. I find that. So, but you still have to walk through the fire. So.
You still have to walk over the glass and walk the fire. So look, you've asked me some questions now, so it's my turn a little bit.
Okay, go for it.
So you've done I understand why you're passionate, and you're obviously clearly passionate about this role. So what did you do before you started doing this?
Oh, completely different. So I worked in investment. I worked as a role where basically I traveled around the world speaking to international investors, presenting at conferences, and talking about global economics, equity markets, bond markets, and so forth. So I actually really enjoyed it. I always say I didn't people say, oh my God, did you do it because you hated it? And I said, no, I really enjoyed that. I really enjoy talking to people. I'm really interested in people. I'm really interested in trends and themes. So spirituality to me is another form of that research. I'm just probably more passionate about that. I always wanted to study psychology. You know, when you kind of have on your bucket list, I'd love to study psychology. And I kind of thought I'd do it when I got a bit older. And then I trained as a coach at night because I'm quite interested in emotional intelligence and developing that part of myself. Coaching was almost coming into part of my job. I had some direct reports, but also I did a lot of presenting, and that's about like listening rather than it, you know, and things. So there was a number of reasons I trained as a coach, including the fact that I wanted to coach people as well. But I actually thought that it was very good for me personally. And I suppose, like, you know, I always say that there wasn't a big vision. I changed a few things and took one step forward. So when I trained as a coach, then I was like, I actually really want that. That reintroduced me to psychology, and positive psychology in particular, which is very linked to coaching. So then I went and did the masters. And when I went to do the masters, I was like, actually, I'm really interested in spirituality, and spiritualities and positive psychology. So kind of little things, I was kind of following. I always describe it like, you know, it's a bit like a sniffer dog. I'm interested in that. So I went and did that. And when I got there, the next clue became clear. But if you'd said to me 5 years ago, you're going to do a master's in positive psychology and research spirituality, I don't think I would have been as defined about it as that. So, but it was, I mean, on a personal level, it's been absolutely incredible. I'm really interested in psychology. I'm really interested in human potential. And then I got to spend a full year researching spirituality and meaning in life, which are my two big passions. So it's been very intense, but it also, I mean, if you just pick your topics that you're interested in, you basically get to spend all of your time doing that for a year. It's been an absolute privilege. And when you, I mean, obviously you're very interested in people's passions. When you do that, who you are and how you operate in the world, I think changes, because you're a more open, expansive version of yourself, because you're really leaning into your strengths and what you're interested in, if you like. So I suppose that I have a very different background, but it has helped me. Like, I used to speak professionally an awful lot, and obviously now I just speak about different topics, if you like, you know. I've taken some skills and transferred them over. So
it's interesting you pick up, because obviously you had what from the outside will be a very successful life. You were traveling a lot. I'm assuming it was quite well rewarded for you.
Yeah. I worked in an industry that was very well paid. There's no
yes. So it gave you the facility to actually study and do other things after, because you walked out the industry. But you know, so the success model I talk. See, I grew up with a success model, and the success model was, you know, study hard, get a good job, find a partner, settle down, buy a house, buy a car, then retire.
Yeah,
that was a success model. And that's a good life. That's it. You're sorted. Yeah. And it's a lot of crap, you know. It's like
well, it's a bit like, you know, it's predefined rules for your life that you don't decide, like, you know. So.
Yeah, precisely. So the question is, like, you know, everyone has a success model, because for one person's success, for other person's not. Now, you've had a successful career. You've had travel. For some people, that would be the pinnacle of their career.
Yeah, so I suppose I'd say a couple of things about that. The success model that you've described is exactly the same one that I would have said for myself even 5 or 10 years ago, because that's socially constructed. We're fed that from the time we're children, that, you know, you're going to go to school and then you're going to educate yourself and then you're going to get a job and then you're going to get married and have kids and blah, blah, blah. And as you said, and then you're going to retire. So I still think that that's very fed. I probably struggled a little bit, because I don't like giving off the idea that, don't get me wrong, I'm very happy with the decision I made, and it's worked out for me, and I really enjoyed it and everything like that. It's not easy to change out of one career that's going well, and as you said, is remunerating you well. I didn't have to worry about my bills or anything like that. To jump ship into something that's unknown, where there's much greater financial uncertainty when you go out and start working for yourself, and you really have to battle with yourself and who you think you are in the world, and how other people perceive you, because definitely other people would have seen me, in inverted commas, as quite successful. But more and more I realized that wasn't my definition of success. I really enjoyed it. I was very good at it. It's not that I was thinking that that can be somebody else's version of success, but I wanted something different for my life going forward. And so I had to, but it took time. Like, I didn't wake up one day and say, this is what it looks like. I think half the struggle is, okay, I'm looking for something different now. So what is the difference? See, actually you have to, I did a lot of coaching. I had my own coach about, like, you know, trying to redefine the map Trying to then deal with what you call people asking me about what I wanted to do, and at times when I wasn't 100% sure as well. So I think that we all struggle from that success map that has been laid out for us, and then we try and walk down this kind of woody path that nobody else has gone down, and we're not sure if it's the right path.
So what's success for you now?
Success for me now is that I'm absolutely fulfilled in what I do.
Okay.
And that I have to balance sometimes, because I would probably sit and read psychology books and spirituality books all day long if I want, but I have to earn a living as well, like, you know, so I have to balance it out. But for me, I actually realized that part of my religion was time. And I had a job that I was doing very well and really enjoying, but I was traveling all the time. Some weeks I would be working 60 hours a week if we were very busy and so forth. There was no time in my life for anything else. So part of my success now is that I have time that is sacred for me. And if that means I want to sit down and read a new book on spirituality, or I want to spend an hour talking to you, which we've done today, and it's been really enjoyable, that is successful for me now, because it makes me feel good. Now, it means other things in my life mightn't get as much light. Maybe I don't earn as much money. Maybe I don't have as much exterior success in other people's eyes, but I continue to say to myself, what makes you really happy, Fiona? And so I recorded another podcast with somebody else a couple of weeks ago, and I walked away afterwards and I felt so happy talking about topics that I liked, interested in somebody else, listening to them. So there has to be time in my life that frees me to do stuff like this, because it's so important to me, and I'm so interested in it. So I think that I suppose the line I tell everybody is that you have to balance what you're really passionate about in life. So you need to find that first. And then, like, there's all the practicalities, like you have to pay your bills, you have to pay your mortgage and all that kind of crack as well. But look at what it means to you, and try as much as you can not to pay attention to what other people want you to do, because there is social pressure to fit into boxes and to do things the way everybody else does it as well, and that's difficult sometimes. I do get people that criticize me for I suppose decisions I've made and stuff like that, and you just have to learn to ignore it as well. So,
well, it's interesting when you become self-employed, you know, success is you can't always measure success with money, because there are times when I have...
No, because there's times there's none.
Well, that's the point. You have to say something, I can't pay you this month, and we'll have to negotiate when I'm going to.
In psychology, we talk about intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation, which I think you would understand what that means. That what do I want to do because I want to do it, and what am I doing because somebody else is going to tell me that I'm great or whatever, give me money or praise me or whatever. And I think that we can't only be intrinsically motivated and do everything that we want. I try to look and say, well, why does Fiona want to do this? But I think the key to life is being able to balance the two and say, sometimes I have to do things because other people want me to do them, but I have to make sure that I'm not ignoring what intrinsically motivates me. And if that's, like, I love to run in nature as well, that's something I do a lot, and like little things like that, little wins like that, I think make your day-to-day life happy. I'm a big believer in what is your day-to-day life. Like, that's why I asked the question, what does spirituality look like on a Tuesday afternoon to you? Because that's real life. You know, the big events are great, but actually it's trying to get the little wins for what gives you great pleasure into your day-to-day life, I think is key to living.
That's always the thing for me. I've always talked about spirituality. It's really easy to be the most spiritual person in the monastery.
Yeah, absolutely. But then you have to deal with everybody.
Now go and stand in Tesco's or something and be spiritual.
Totally.
Or go somewhere and have an argument with the parking attendant and now be spiritual. You know, it's when you're dealing with the real things in life.
Yeah.
Spiritual at the same time.
Yeah.
That's when the quality really shows.
Totally. And that's about grounding yourself and being in contact with yourself, knowing what your emotions are. And that again goes back to contemplation and time. I know myself that if I take on too much work, which when you're self-employed you can do, because you're trying to make sure that the pot is always full, or I don't meditate enough, or I don't spend a little bit of time in nature, I become depleted, and I'm more likely to be sitting in my car cursing at somebody who's cut in front of me or whatever, like, you know, because you're human. That's what you
that's all.
So I think some of the keys to spirituality is that it doesn't have to be a big trip. It doesn't have to be a big retreat. It can be 10 minutes on your own every day. I'm a big proponent of people carving out a little bit of time on their own, even if it's only 10 minutes. And I think that you just reconnect with yourself.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, then I think you're a better person in the world, or certainly I'm a better person in the world if I'm able to do that.
So you asked me about spirituality. My kind of thought about it, it has to come back at you, I'm afraid. So So where do you sit on this
Topic. So I would say that I do believe in something. I don't believe in the old man sitting on the thing on the throne in heaven, if you like. I suppose I'm more of a believer in universal consciousness, which is that we're all connected. I like the idea of oneness, so the spiritual interconnectedness of everything. For me, spirituality is really, I think the word connectivity says everything. That if I am connected to myself, I feel more connected to you, I feel more connected to my planet. And again, I think that all of those concepts are intertwined. If I believe that we're all connected, then how I treat myself is how I treat others. Like a lot of the old kind of spiritual teachings, if we just pare them back a little bit and get away from some of the dogma, they make sense. Like, you know, treat your neighbor as you would treat yourself and so forth. But everything for me comes back to that we are all connected in some way, and we're connected to our planet. And when I look at, I suppose we see this fall off in terms of spiritual practice. I'm a big believer that people should do whatever they want. But equally, it has coincided with inequality, climate change, all of these problems that we're having because we're disconnected. We are disconnected from ourselves. We're disconnected from each other. So for me, the key is always, before you do anything else, connecting to yourself. And I think that when you do that, you're more able to connect with other people in a very, I suppose, compassionate and kind way. And you're more able to see, as you said, like I run through nature because I recognize that that is God made, for want of a better word, because you're able to see that because you're connected with yourself. And I think a lot of the kind of the problems we have in terms of destroying the planet, like we can't even see it because we're so disconnected. That was a very long answer, if you like. So I suppose the key for me is connectivity. Is that it's how that we connect with ourselves, with each other, with the planet.
I think for me, that connection of spirituality, and I think it's about being in awe of stuff.
Mm.
Yeah, so those are the points when I really feel connected, when I go somewhere and I'm in awe of my surroundings.
Yeah. There's
up here, you know, there's loads of places up here
that you can see it. Yeah, yeah.
You can stand somewhere and think, oh my God, this is just amazing.
Yeah. Like I go running along the beach here because I live beside the beach, and sometimes I just stand, you know, the beach is very still, the water has come in, it's just beautiful. And as you said, you feel that kind of awe, and awe is a very expansive emotion. And it's typically linked to religion and spirituality, and it doesn't have to be about believing in something that's bigger than you. I suppose it's recognizing almost that the planet is bigger than you. Like there's kind of way
I had an experience years ago. Years ago, before I met my wife, and I was big into photography at the time. And I went into a park. It was in London, and it was early morning, and I was taking photographs in the park. And I had a macro lens on my camera, so I was taking some real close-up shots. And there was drips of water on the trees, and I focused into this drip of water, and the sunlight was coming through it, and there was like a halo of rainbows around this rainbow.
Mm.
And I had this overwhelming feeling of the world was perfect and everything would be okay. And it was just like an amazing sense of just, and I can't even begin to describe how that felt. But it was almost, it's that kind of spiritual moment.
So Abraham Maslow would have called that a peak experience. So where we feel, and his definition of it would be that we feel simultaneously greater and smaller at the same time.
Yes, like, and part of the drop, you know, and not part of the drop.
Yeah, exactly. That we're kind of, it's almost like we've been lifted out of ourselves. And that would be like, depending on whatever research you want to read, he would call it a peak experience. Maybe some religions would call it a mystical experience. You'd have people call it self-transcendence, you know, that idea that you've risen out of yourself because you've transcended the ego effectively when you've done that. And nature is a great giver of moments like that. If we can take the time to just spend and connect in
tiny seconds, just
tiny seconds,
and it's past, and it's almost like something to search for life, you know. It's like
but it'll probably it arrives then when you're not searching for it, I think. Like, you know, so because I think when you're at your most relaxed, when we tend to experience it most in nature. So I like to hike. So when I think of that, I'm always at the top of a mountain in awe of nature, that kind of expansive feeling that you have as well. So
I was out Sunday and I saw something like I have never seen before Sunday, never ever seen. I was out walking in the woods on Sunday and I saw hair ice.
What's hair ice?
It literally looks like fur.
Okay.
Literally, I can send you a picture of it somewhere, but it literally looks like tiny pieces of fur, and it's actually made of ice crystals. And apparently, it's something to do with fungus in the wood
Oh
that
wow. Okay.
makes these ice crystals grow and it's like little furry fingers. And it's like, I've never seen that before. I didn't know ice could grow like that.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But I think that like we live in as people we live very like we have this kind of scarcity complex of there's not enough, like, you know, and then all you have to do is walk out and see the number of daisies that are growing in the garden and realize that there is always enough and nature always has enough. I go back to connect. If we can just connect into that, we'd stop trying to buy everything, kill everything, you know, destroy everything along the way.
So you got any more questions for me?
Do I have any more questions? Do you think there's a relationship between your emotions and your spirituality?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah? Do you want to tell me a little bit about that?
Because I think when you are in your anger and in your intense emotions that block you from higher emotions, when you're in the lower base emotions, I think your spirituality is gone. It's never there.
Yeah.
You are in the you I'm not quite sure how to describe it really, but that's not a place to be.
Yeah.
So yes,
So
it definitely is. When you're in that lighter feeling of love and openness, then you're obviously your spirituality is very much connected.
mm. And do you do something to try and be in that light and love rather than the base emotions, as you've called them?
Good question.
Thank you.
Say again. Ask the question again.
So I suppose you gave me a kind of what I would call a contrasting view that you can be in what you've described as the base emotions, which I think are more negative, heavy emotions,
Yeah.
versus lighter, more expansive emotions like love and awe, for example. So what do you do or can you do to try and stay in the more elevated emotions versus the negative emotions?
It's very much about. So I have this thing I call the spiral.
Okay, yeah.
And I measure my emotional state or my mental state on that spiral.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm either going up or I'm going down.
Okay.
Now, if I'm going up, I'm working in the right direction. So, and there are times when I have to really work at heading up or staying still. So that's about me maintaining a positive mental attitude. That's about looking at the brighter side of things. It's about recognizing that shit happens and I can deal with it. I have the capacity to deal with it. It's when I allow things to get to me that I start cycling down, and then I'll start looking at the negative side of things, and then I'm on the downward path. And unless I put the brakes on at some point, we ain't going to a good place.
So in that case, is there something particular that you do?
If it's really bad, I'll take some time out. I'll go out for a walk, do something, change my state, do something to change my state, exercise, run, do something to change my state.
Yeah.
Go to the gym, do something, throw some heavy weights around. The gym's always quite good.
Yeah.
That's quite good.
So it's a case of intervening and doing.
Yeah, intervening. Yeah, go and lift 60 kilos. That'll change your mindset.
For sure. Or going for a run in nature. I mean, it's a case of like connecting back in again. So. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I asked you this earlier. Is there anything that you would like to do and haven't or can't? And I usually ask this question. I'm interested in whether there's things that people are interested in that for some reason they feel is unavailable to them.
As in something physical?
Or spiritual, mental, whatever that could be for you.
I think one of the issues for me is choice and knowing actually what I want. Because a lot of the time I don't know what I want. And I think a lot of people live in the same space of like, well, I actually don't really want anything. But it's not actually that one. I wonder if it's I truly don't want anything or whether it's I am not allowing myself to want anything.
Okay, tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, it's like, what would you go and do? What would be a joyous thing to do? What would you do as a reward for yourself? I don't know. I do what I do. It's like, go out for an expensive meal, take it or leave it if it's just food. I guess going to theatre is quite good. That can always be uplifting. but I mean, it's not high on, it's like, I lose the idea of, when I was a child, doing things that were fun and joyous, or when I was a teenager, was relatively easy. Well, I don't drink anymore to the level that I used to. So going out for a good drink doesn't do it anymore for me. It's those sort of things. It's like, I'm 56 now. What is it I do? What is fun now?
That's a great question to ask yourself, though, because our tastes do change as we get over. And you've said yourself in the last couple of years, there's probably been less time maybe invested in your spirituality. But perhaps that's because your taste has changed, and that's almost an inquiry. There's almost a question to take away with yourself to ask
it probably is.
what would look like. Because I can totally understand that answer. But often I ask the question because people will, depending on who you speak to, some people find spirituality difficult to talk about for whatever that reason may be. And when you do start to tap in, they'll say, oh, I've always wanted to do this, but I don't feel I can. And I'm always curious about, why do you feel you can't? And some of it can be around judgment, or my favorite is that some people sometimes say, oh, that sounds a bit woo-woo, like, that we see it as being a little bit thing. I have a friend who always jokes with me that spirituality is woo-woo, so I always tease term. But I'd really like to do that, whatever it is, and for whatever reason, because of their community or society or whatever, they feel that they can't do that because maybe within their culture it hasn't been traditionally what they did or whatever. So I ask the question because I'm often curious, is there something that people want to do that they haven't really gone for?
I am very passionate about climate change and those implications around that. So I guess a lot of those things, a lot of my restrictions on myself, and I don't want to be part of that problem.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It's like when I was a teenager, or when I was in my 20s, I loved the idea of going to Australia and diving the Barrier Reef. And it's a nice idea, but I couldn't justify the flight to Australia anymore.
Yeah.
For the sake of me going into some water and looking at a coral reef, well, I can just as easily look at, in pictures or. Yes, it's an experience. I appreciate an experience.
But it's a case of finding the experience closer to home.
But is it really worth me, sort of like adding to my carbon debt by doing that?
Yeah. No. And I think that's a spiritual choice in itself, so. Yeah. Okay. Very good.
So what is it? Back on a question to you. I mean, are you looking for? I mean, obviously, this podcast, a lot of it is about promotion for you on some level. I mean, what is it you're looking for in terms of more podcast guests, more people?
Why did I do this?
Yeah.
For me, it wasn't about garnering clients, if I'm being honest. So I sat down after I handed in my dissertation. What does this look like? So clearly I speak and so forth, and I do that, as part of my business. But to me, this was separate. So I launched what I called a series of projects called Exploring Spirituality. And for me, this is a passion project. So it's more around, I really want there to be a dialogue around spirituality in the 21st century. I want it to be less polarized. I want it to be, or my ambition is that it's less polarized, that we create environments, communities where people can embrace, cultivate spirituality in whatever way they want, and feel empowered to do that. And I think that what I have realized when I go out and speak about the topic is that some people come up to me afterwards and go, oh, that's really interesting. I'm really interested in it, but I never talk about it. And feedback I've got from ex-colleagues was, never knew you were interested in it. And I'm like, you're right. I probably didn't bring it into the office, because I wasn't sure how that would be greeted in such a kind of in a different environment. So for me, and the idea around reverse podcasting was part of that I wanted to, let's get conversation started among different people. I don't have to be there, it's more a case of start a conversation. People will listen to this conversation. It might spark something for them. They might have a conversation with somebody else. And loads of people said to me, oh, Fiona, you should launch your own podcast. And I was like, are people not just going to get bored listening to my story? I'm just one person who's interested in spirituality, but for me, this is much broader than that. So the idea of what I'm calling reverse podcasting, but I'm open to anybody coming up with a better name, was that if I have a conversation with you, your listeners will hear you and me talk about that. And then that's one community that are maybe having a conversation. I speak to somebody else, different listenerships, maybe completely different answers. Maybe people think that particular person thinks about spirituality in a different way. And what we show is, I'm going to tag them all on my website. my primary reason was that you could have 10, 20 people talking about spirituality and they all come out with different answers, and that's empowering for other people. That's empowering for other people to think about it. So,
and the upshot of it all, which is even better, is you don't have to do the bloody editing afterwards.
well, I can tell you, of all my skills, that is not one that I would do. So I would have to hire somebody to do that. That is definitely not I would try. But it was just an idea, and I said I'll throw it out there and I'll see. And actually, I was surprised at the amount of people who came back to me and said that they're interested in the topic and they'd like to speak about it. So, so that was it. And I plan to run a bigger event next year, which I would have multiple speakers talking about spirituality from multiple different angles. And again, using it as information for people rather than the whole ethos of all the projects I run is that this is non-directive. I'm not going to tell you what spirituality.
So here's an interesting question to explore.
Yeah.
You really, and we can both explore this because
Sure.
it's like, you know, so the church grew out of the fact that communities and tribes got together to have a ritual, a tradition.
Sure.
And so the churches grew out of that, and certainly modern Christian church has more to do with the Roman Empire than anything else. The Romans decided this would be the religion that we'll all follow, and then there were various meetings to decide how this would be done. So the church, in a way, you know, most people call it the church, was actually a construct, more to do with political management probably at the time. But we have this thing where people go and have a shared experience of religion. And the new spirituality that's kind of coming out is very much about an individual's a personal experience of it. So the question is, how do we reconnect this? Because the connecting us together in a spiritual practice is far more powerful than each of us trying to do it on our own. You know, we're more than the sum of the parts. When you get a group of people together doing something, the power of it is actually quite enormous.
I think that's true. I would also, I suppose I'd not contradict, but I'd have a slightly different view that you don't, I think that the power of community is fantastic, and the church has definitely facilitated that through the ages, and that is something that we are missing somewhat now, and I think that that's the point you're making. I don't think if we got 1,000 people to go in and do things in exactly the same way, that that's more powerful than each individual trying to cultivate their own spirituality within their life. I think what happens is one becomes the other. So if you cultivate spirituality in your own way in your life, you automatically come together with communities as well. But it doesn't necessarily have to follow that will be a spiritual community that you...
Do you sing?
I do sing, actually, yeah.
Have you sung in a choir?
Yeah, I used to sing in a choir, yeah.
Yeah, go into a choir, because it's like, it amazes me when you get a group of people singing together, something happens in that moment.
So I would say that two things happen. One, you have community, but the other thing that you have is self-transcendence. So I would argue, you told me about peak experience where you took a photograph. I would argue that almost the same thing happens to you when you're singing as well. Would I be right?
Well, I only don't experience it all the time, but you know that everybody in the room is getting something out of this. Yeah.
So I think that music lifts us out of ourselves. And then within a religious choir, or a spiritual choir, there's a combined belief, even if people have different individual ways of approaching it.
A spiritual song, it just has to be a song. If you go and sing it, you can sing it, as long as the lyrics aren't about death and destruction. If you sing something relatively uplifting, I think it does actually have a major effect on them. I mean, you can see it. I mean, people go to concerts, they all sit and sing along at the end, and they come out as high as, like, raising up in terms of their energy.
Yeah, I think going back to your original question, one thing I'm conscious of, and this is something I suppose I'm still continuing to incubate ideas in my head, is I'd like to have events where people can come together and discuss what spirituality means to them. What I definitely don't want to do is have events where I'm saying, this is what I think you should do, because that's just another form of a church, like, to look in a way. So I suppose for me, it's trying to get the right, I'd like to build a community over time, but I'd like to get the ethos of that community right, that you can come with a variety of different beliefs. And you will be welcome to come and spend time with us and to discuss that, and that it's very much the power and the agency in your belief still lies with you. And I suppose that's something that I'm thinking about in the back of my head, because I certainly don't want to come along and say, oh, I found the answers. I haven't done that. I have researched it, and I'm really curious to hear what other people's experiences are. But the power sits with the individual for me all the time.
That's kind of what the Finham Foundation is, really.
I think so, from what I've read.
They call themselves, it's like the lobby. You basically go and you arrive at the foundation, and there's lots of doors, and all the doors lead to different religious practices. So there is a spiritual practice within the foundation, and the basic premise is that work is love in action.
Yeah.
So everybody does things around the foundation on the grounds that this is how I express my spirituality in some way. So if I'm cleaning, cooking, or gardening, it's all part of the process.
So I think if I were to try and, I think the words that I would probably bring to something if I was trying to, is connection and belonging, because I think that's what you're talking about in terms of how powerful religions have been in terms of providing people with somewhere to go. And I do think that we probably feel a lack of belonging in the world today, and I think that I'd like to see something where people feel that they belong regardless of what their individual belief system is, because that's about having our global community coming together, that we are more alike than we are different, if you like. So
we have broken one of my big things about podcasts, is that we've run beyond the hour. So we now have to make this into 2 podcasts. So we've got as long as we need to chat if there's any more conversation to be had.
Well, I've asked you all the questions. So.
You've asked me all the questions. You've run out of questions.
That's it. I like to let the conversations flow, so you tell your story in the way you want to. Again, everything I do is non-directive, if you like, but I like to ask questions but hear what you have to say rather than say, I want you to answer this, that, and the others.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I do the same in a way. I have 4 questions, but doesn't mean they're the main question. There are questions in between.
Have you finished asking me all your questions?
Well, there is the one question which I didn't ask you. What's the one question I should have asked you that I didn't?
What is the one question? You've kind of asked me, what a lot of people forget to ask me is why I do this. And you have asked me that, because you asked, like, why do I want to come on a podcast? So I guess that I have a vision for what I think the world should look like. And I'm trying to, how would I describe it? A friend of mine said, you're polishing your little part of the cosmic jigsaw, like, doesn't come away. And I feel it is nice, isn't it? I really like that. Because sometimes it can feel, you might have felt this when you set up the podcast, sometimes it can feel quite overwhelming to take on a project that you're doing it because you're passionate about it, not because it is necessarily going to pay your bills or whatever. And it can feel quite big, so I have to remind myself to put little steps in it. But I suppose I feel I have, as a citizen of the world, I have a duty of care, and this is my passion. And typically when you are passionate about something, it is linked to your purpose. And when we talk about meaning in life, I think that sometimes we have to uncover what do you really feel passionate about, because you've probably something to give the world if you can uncover that. So me, I found my passion in doing this because I was searching for it myself. And the more I have found what I'm looking for, the happier and more content I have become. And I feel that there's an opportunity for other people there as well. So that's me taking what I've learned and trying to spread the word and just polish my little bit of the jigsaw. And then other people are polishing their little parts of the jigsaw. And hopefully we have a better world when we have finished that.
That sounds lovely. So do you want people to get in touch with you?
They can if they want. So certainly anybody can email me at fiona@fionaenglishpp.com. So anybody who has a podcast, who wants to participate, who's interested in the projects, they can see it on my website. So there's a number of different projects that I'll be running over the years. So please feel free to get in touch if
you'll get me some links, and we'll put them on the podcast page for those.
Yeah.
So I have one question left, which is the big question. You see, so we're born into this earth, and I always say it the same way: born as animals.
It's true.
And humans are the only creature on this earth that's bloody arrogant enough to think we have a purpose.
Yeah.
So, what is the meaning of life for you? Why are we here?
Why are we here? You see, I think that in some ways that's the wrong question. I think the question is, why are you here? So I think that meaning is quite
Why are you here then?
yeah. I say that because people say to me, oh, you're interested in meaning in life. What's the meaning of life? And in positive psychology, we always say meaning in life. So what's the meaning in your life? And I would say there are two things. So I'm a big fan of humanistic psychology, as my reference to Abraham Maslow would have suggested earlier on. And both Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers, who again was a person-centered psychotherapist, believed that we were born authentic, and our life's purpose was to try and, so we are born perfect. We are born exactly as we're supposed to be. And then of course we grow up in a society that tells us that we have to have success systems and everything like that. And I think that part of our life's purpose is to come back to ourselves, to come back to who we are and who we're supposed to be. And that's why when I talk about my passion and my purpose, part of the meaning in my life was to find that, I believe, that in my own struggle, there was meaning for me, because the more I uncovered that, I suppose, spiritual struggle and trying to grapple with my own belief system, that there was meaning in me for me to do that, because in turn, hopefully I can help other people to do that as well. And that was about coming back to who I am, what I can give, what I'm passionate about. And I'm very, I suppose as an add-on, I'm a little bit concerned about how much we talk about purpose today, because I think we're putting people under great pressure to find a purpose, so, and I always say to people, the fact that you're here is enough of a purpose. You were born, you have life. I think that's beautiful. You should embrace that. But if you can find or lean into or give yourself permission to invest the time in the things that you are interested in, your passion and your purpose will emerge. And then your life becomes more meaningful.
That's the point, isn't it? People have got to be prepared to do the work.
And to give the time.
Because sitting down watching Netflix and hoping it'll get better is not the answer.
No, and I can tell you firsthand that it's not easy. I've made a lot of changes. I'm a coach myself, but I also have a coach. I read loads of books and everything like that. So it's not, you don't wake up one morning and go, boom, here's my purpose. Fantastic. I found it. It's a struggle sometimes. And some days it's really clear and other days it's not.
I've heard it as it's the whisper.
Yes, absolutely.
It's the whisper. It's the quiet whisper in the wind. It's that little voice that you've got to listen to.
Yeah. And often that whisper will be going against what the well-worn path looks like, what society thinks you should do. It could make you some people look at me when I tell them that I research and I speak about spirituality like I'm weird, so you're not always going to get a round of applause for leaning into your passion. No. But if it's what you're interested in, you should absolutely go for it, because that's...
Eileen Caddy is a classic example. This is like 50, 60 years ago. I mean, she was radical at the time. She knew her life wasn't working with her husband, and she just walked out without her children. She just left him with her, left the kids. It wasn't working. And I know one knows the real background of that one. But she came, she met Peter and they developed the Finhorn Foundation.
Yeah.
But she, she was a bit, I would imagine she was a bit of a pariah at the time, like this woman.
Right. That was very much going against the grain at the time. I hadn't heard that story before. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So that's
So thank you for your insights into this, and it's been an enjoyable podcast talking to you.
Thank you for allowing me to come on. I know that I've come up with this idea, and I'm quite thankful that people have allowed me to come on and chat about it. So.
Well, as I said, I'm happy to talk the hind leg off a donkey if required, but the question is whether it's interesting conversation. That's the only thing about it, really.
Well, the way I look at it is, if one person feels that they got something out of the conversation, then that is loads.
This is true. This is very true. I think I will
break this. I can tell you, I personally got something out of the conversation.
Well, that's nice. Thank you very much. Okay. Well, Fiona English, thank you for your time, and it's been a pleasure. And I think we may be talking again at some stage.
Oh, great. Yeah.
And that was Life, Passion and Business with Paul Harvey and Fiona English. If you would like to get in touch with Fiona to talk about her spirituality project or to check out her coaching situation, you can find her at fionaenglishpp.com. You can also find her on LinkedIn and on Facebook. All those links will be available on the podcast page underneath the player as usual. that brings us to the end of the program. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this podcast. If you enjoyed it, please share it. And as Fiona said, this is about conversations that she wants to spread. So why not have a conversation with your friends or people about spirituality and what it means to you? If you enjoy this show, please, as I said, share it, like it, and subscribe to us, or better still, leave us a review on iTunes. Anyway, thank you for your time and attention, and I will catch you later. All the best.